The views expressed, opinions given, and any communication made between the hosts and guests of What Are You Afraid of Horror and Paranormal Show do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of Para-X Radio, EMC Network, or all services that play this show. The hosts and services are not responsible for the actions of their guests, and the original rights of all intellectual property is retained by the creator, and all work is used with either permission or Creative Commons license. The show is for entertainment purposes only. I'm horror author T. Fox Dunham.
And I'm horror author and filmmaker Phil Thomas.
And tonight we're asking you,
what are you afraid of? Philadelphia's horror home with hosts T. Fox Dunham and Phil Thomas.
Well, we're pursuing our 2019 schedule at What Are You Afraid of Horror and Paranormal Show. This is horror author T. Fox Dunham. Unfortunately, Phil is a wee bit under the weather, and he can't join me today, and it's such a shame because we have an esteemed guest with us who was on an episode in 2017, and she's returned this January, and she's come home from Europe to face this terrible cold snap that we're having right now. It is chilly out there, and everyone, I want you to stay indoors and listen to your favorite horror and paranormal radio show at What Are You Afraid of? Horror and Paranormal Radio Show, as a matter of fact. Her name is Katrina Weidman. Now, in the 3rd grade, a teacher told Kat she would never amount to anything. She's from the Bucks County area, and her life changed when she dropped off a friend at Pennsylvania State University, to where she then transferred and joined the world-renowned Paranormal Research Society, training and working as their case manager. She then had the good fortune of co-hosting A&E's hit docudrama, Paranormal State, from 2007 to 2011, which chronicled the work of the PRS. Kat then became the host for Chiller's Real Fear, The Truth Behind the Movies, which explores the real-life terror behind some of the world's most iconic horror films, and hosted the follow-up special, Real Fear, The Truth Behind More Movies. That was in 2013. Now she co-hosts the show Paranormal Lockdown, which is playing in its 3rd season for Destination America. It's a show that follows her and Nick Groff as they live in some notoriously haunted sites for 72 hours. Kat continues to pursue projects in music as a singer and producer, working with the band Away From 30, and she writes about haunted kitchens and recipes in her blog, well, Haunted Kitchens. You can find her website at www.katrinaweidman.com, and she's on episode 109, properly named Katrina Weidman. How are you this afternoon?
I'm good, Fox. How are you doing?
I'm hanging in there. You know, it's been quite a year.
Yeah.
Welcome home.
Thank you. Yes, I've been on the road since April, so it's nice to be home full time.
Indeed. Well, thank you for coming on the show. It's great to have you. We had you back in 2017, and I kind of tell people she's coming back to her hometown paranormal newspaper.
I am, yeah. It's funny that we're so close to each other as far as the distance goes.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
So, you're back, and Paranormal Lockdown is playing on Destination America right now, and your season finale is premiering on February 5th, correct?
Correct, yeah. So, it's actually 2 episodes, so you get kind of double dose, and we premiered the season on December 4th of 2018, and so next week, or actually in a couple of days, is just our season finale already. And right now, what's airing are UK episodes. So Nick and we actually went over to the UK and investigated 10 different locations. So that's what's airing right now in the States.
And you also investigated the Jim Beam distillery last year.
Yeah, which was wild. Kind of waking up every day to the smell of very strong alcohol. You know, it takes me back to my college days.
I wanted to know, did they send you home with a couple of cases?
They didn't actually. I think I think Nick ended up buying some stuff to take home and Rob did. And, but I'm more of a wine gal myself. So I didn't end up taking any bourbon home.
Oh, that's a shame. I do like Jim Beam now and again. But I can
I did get to taste it while I was there, though.
Oh, you did?
Oh, yeah. It's definitely a kicker. I don't drink hard alcohol anymore. So it's like, once you haven't done that for a long time, it's like, woo! You definitely get that Kentucky hug they talk about.
The Kentucky hug? I've not heard of that.
Oh, yeah.
But I understand exactly what you mean. Your tolerance changes quite a bit.
Yeah.
But that was fun, and you've been over in Europe, over in England, exploring some wonderful sites. So, for our audience who didn't hear your last episode, by the way, audience who didn't shame, you can find her episode over at www.whatayouafraidofpodcast.com with expanded content on every episode, plus ghost stories and information on our friends, publishers, and books that we are excited that are coming out. So, could you remind our audience a little about your adventures in the paranormal and how they got started?
Sure. Well, I kind of have the typical story, I think, of a paranormal investigator because I grew up in haunted houses. So that's really where the interest stemmed from. I was just a very little kid when I noticed that things were different. And what I mean by different is that I never really felt alone. And I always, I was so scared to stay upstairs by myself. I would never sleep in my own bedroom. I had imaginary friends. And, who knows if that's something paranormal or not. But it was always just this very uneasy feeling. And I remember the first experience I had that really stuck with me was my sister. She saw a little girl sitting in my room and she thought it was me. And when she was coming down the steps, there I was sitting at the bottom of the steps. And that was like the first conversation I remember having of, how did you do that? How did you get down the steps without me seeing you? And it was like, well, what are you talking about? I've been sitting here the whole time. And I was just a child when that experience happened. And, it's just over the years, I just had more and more things happen. And it progressed to the point where when I went away to college, Ghost Hunters was very popular at the time. And my aunt, who's had a lot of experiences herself, I was talking to her and she's like, you ought to see if they have some sort of club about the paranormal at Penn State. And if they don't, maybe you could start one, that kind of thing. And so I looked and sure enough, they had a club. And I ended up signing up with that club. Funny story, I had to drop out actually after like one meeting because I had like all this like crazy stuff happen in the first couple weeks up at school. And I was a double major and, all that stuff. So I'm like, you know what, I'll just focus on like acclimating to actual school. And so I went back to the club 2 years later. And they, at the time, they accepted me as a trainee. They had a training course you could take. And I signed up for that. And then they had a TV show going on. And they had they were called auditions, but it's not like you're reading a script or anything. It was more like, can you be in front of a camera and articulate what you're thinking and feeling? And, so I had to go in and meet with the producers and all that stuff. And it just kind of led me on this journey of doing this stuff in front of a camera. I do it privately as well, but, when you're traveling a lot, you can't always take on a huge amount of cases privately.
Right. I remember you mentioning Atherton last time we spoke.
Yeah, Atherton Paranormal is a group that I started with Heather Taddy and Josh Light, who were both on Paranormal State with me, and we worked together in PRS. And it's really there for, because our resources are really low, because it's just the three of us, and it really does take a village to, kind of work through some of these cases. We're there to set up to kind of advise and educate, and occasionally we'll take on a full case.
Excellent. Well, I can imagine people are very excited to get you into their house investigating.
Yeah, it's, and again, it's tough because we have a pretty strong vetting process. So, it's very rare for us to take on a full case, but, when we can, we're happy to do so.
Indeed. So, the show you're on, Paranormal Lockdown, it's very cool. I love the storytelling aspect of it. It's nice that we can just focus on you and Nick and get to know you. And you go on an investigation for 72 hours where this sort of lock you in the building. Now, when you know an investigation's coming up, how do you prepare for it? Is there a process you go through?
Sleeping a lot. Because when we do lockdown, it's very, very long hours. It is probably the most challenging job I've ever had as far as, testing your mental stamina. And, so I mean, we work like, I think there's been times where we've worked from sunup to sundown, and then of course, Nick and I are on camera the whole time because even when we're sleeping, we're taping ourselves. Even when we're brushing our teeth, we have a camera, so, because you never really know when something's going to happen. So we make sure we have a camera with us, at most appropriate times. Obviously there's some times where we can't, but,
I would hope so.
yeah. So, so it's definitely mentally challenging. So I usually just try to get in my sleep, try to make sure all my other work for anything else I'm working on is done and, kind of organized. That way I can fully concentrate on what we're doing on lockdown.
Excellent. Mm-hmm. Well, your show narrates not only ghost stories, but also the essence of setting, a vital component to paranormal literature. You're exploring some fascinating milieux in 2019, well, you explored in 2019 the Beattie Mansion, the Shepton Mallet Prison, Cambria Jail, and the Drakelow tunnels. What was it like for you being buried in the tunnels?
The tunnels, it's funny because before we were going, I remember being really nervous because I'm like, oh my God, like, how are we going to, it sounds really daunting, really. And when I got there, I mean, the elements sucked to put it in like just a very plain way. They sucked, I have asthma too. So it's like, you're breathing in all that dust and there's no windows. And luckily we're not confined to the actual structure that we're investigating, where we kind of keep it to the property so we can go outside. Mm-hmm. But it was still, that part was challenging, but it wasn't as scary as I was expecting. There was this weird feeling I had when I was there that although, the structure itself was domineering, the feeling I got there wasn't that way. I actually felt very protected being there. And it's funny because out of all the places I've slept, I would put that in one of the places where it was a little easier to fall asleep than most, which is odd and not what I expected at all.
And it was designed to be that way. And, of course, if a nuclear war had broken out, you'd be very safe.
I would be super safe in there. Oh, yeah. And it's interesting when you see the whole layout. I mean, it's like over 3 miles of tunnel system in England. And they still have the kitchen and the dining hall, and they have working bathrooms in there. So it was definitely an interesting experience.
Fascinating. But you also got to enjoy the Park Hotel, being the first paranormal team to explore this location. So how was that different than your other usual decaying haunted places?
Well, it was a lot nicer because it's, they actually have it up and running. And they've been renovating a lot of the rooms. So some of the rooms are just very beautiful. And, that was definitely a nice change as far as the elements go. As far as the paranormal goes, though, we did have a lot of experiences there. We actually heard a disembodied scream. And one of the things we were debating was it outside. But when we started to, review the footage and compare it to noises we had coming from outside, it didn't match. So, I mean, we believe it came from inside the building. And what's funny is that that's something that multiple people have reported over the years of hearing this disembodied scream of a woman. There were multiple times where we had doors close on us. And, some of the doors, I'm like, well, maybe that could be explainable. But one, and unfortunately, it wasn't caught on camera. Nick's was caught on camera. He had a door close on him. That was caught, but I was actually kind of sleeping through that. So, but one, it was very odd. There's these, and if you watch the episodes, there's kind of this lobby area with an old, the name is escaping me right now, but the old record players that have the big funnel coming out of them.
The Victrolas.
Yes, thank you. And so there's this room there, and I think they call it like the lobby or the library. I can't remember what they officially call it there, but that's where we were doing our testimonials. And our testimonials is when you see, me and Nick kind of sitting down, it's just us and the camera, and we're explaining what's going through our head at the time. And we do those after we wrap our investigation, we do those with Rob. And so Rob and I are sitting there doing my testimonial, and we're done. And I mean, these things take like 2 hours,
Mm-hmm.
And so we're done. And I stand up and I'm handing him my microphone. He's sitting next to, there's these big, they must weigh a couple 100 pounds, these wooden folded doors that are attached to the walls, right? Very old, kind of like pocket doors, but they fold. And from what I understand, they're original. Very, very heavy. And I'm standing up and I'm giving Rob my microphone, and we're just sort of chit-chatting like, oh yeah, I get to go home for a couple days, that kind of thing. And this door just moves. This heavy wooden folding door just moves on its own. And I was staring right at it. I saw it with both of my eyes just move on its own. And it was just so wild and random, because we were just chatting, nothing in particular, and this door just moves on its own. So it's very interesting. We could not find a natural explanation for that one.
Excellent. At the Park Hotel.
At the Park Hotel.
We are speaking to Katrina Weidman on episode 109, aptly named Katrina Weidman. This is T. Fox Dunham at What Are You Afraid of? Horror and Paranormal Show on ParaX Radio at Friday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're located in Philadelphia, and you can also find us at the website at www.whatayouafraidofpodcast.com for expanded episodes, ghost story, and information about our guests. And it's been a lot of fun. Now, I'm going to pause here. Our fans may not know this, but in 2 days, it is my birthday. As a matter of fact, I've lived for another year. And I'm going to be playing a small piece from my novel, Destroying the Tangible Illusion of Reality, or Searching for Andy Kaufman. In this surreal road novel, Anthony searches for the father he's never met, Andy Kaufman, the legendary song and dance man from the 70s. There's a few problems here, of course. Andy Kaufman died in 1984, and thanks to a recent cancer diagnosis, Anthony doesn't have much longer to live either. However, new evidence has come to light that questions whether or not Kaufman is actually dead. Could he be hiding after all these years? Anthony is determined to discover the truth before his own clock runs out. During his travels, he will encounter shameless medicine men, grifters, Walmart shoppers, the ghosts of Elvis and Warhol, and the devil himself. This is Destroying the Tangible Illusion of Reality, or Searching for Andy Kaufman, published by Perpetual Motion Machine Publishing, on What Are You Afraid of?
What Are You Afraid of?
Hi, I'm Tim Wagner, Bram Stoker award-winning author.
Hashtag Grave Girls.
This is Katrina Weidman of Destination America's Paranormal Lockdown.
This is Jim Chambers. I'm the author of The Engines of Sacrifice.
This is Jasper Barr, award-winning author of The Final Cut.
And you're listening to What Are You Afraid of?
What Are You Afraid of?
To What Are You Afraid of?
What are you afraid of?
Love it. Fantoxic, please. Fantoxic.
Rat, where are you going?
I'm going back to the Paranormal View, back where I belong.
Please, take me with you.
No, I'm through with everything here. I want to see if there's something left in life I haven't explored. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, Rat, don't run to them. They talk about ghosts and hauntings, UFOs, and all kind of supernatural scary stuff.
You'll never understand, will you, Scarlet?
No!
Well, that's your misfortune.
Rat, if you go, where shall I go? What shall I do?
Frankly, my dear... Line!
Oh, you gotta be kidding.
That's the Paranormal View with your host, Henry Foister, Jeffrey Gould, and Barbara Duncan. Every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the ParaX Radio Network.
Mercy, a new horror medical thriller from author T. Fox Dunham, published by Bloodbound Books. Based on the author's horrific battle with a rare form of lymphoma that involved intense chemotherapy and radiation, Fox turns the horror of his experience into terror on the page.
William Saint is dying of cancer. On most days, death seems like a humane alternative to the treatment. Stricken with fever, William is rushed to Mercy, notorious as a place to send the sickest of the poor and uninsured to be forgotten, and finds the hospital in even worse condition than his previous visit.
Willie's memories faded. He grabbed his sack head, the sack head of the scarecrow, picking at the exposed chicken wire to hold them in. However, the memories fell out of the holes in his face. They wormed and crawled from the leather flesh and the old clothing of the scarecrow, then squirmed and wiggled down his body.
The grounds are unkempt, the foundation is cracking, and like the wild mushrooms sprouting from the fissures of decay around it, something is growing inside the hospital. Something dark.
Fangoria gives Mercy 3.5 out of 4 skulls. Dunham has channeled his many brushes with the other side into the exquisitely rendered, lyrical, supernatural hospital thriller Mercy.
It's feeding on the sickness and sustaining itself on the staff, changing them, and now it wants Willie.
Come now, Mr. Saint. Just a little more of that sweet milk. So salty and so good. You won't miss it. And we ever do so like our delicacies here at Mercy Hospital.
Part medical horror, part supernatural suspense, Mercy is a hard-hitting fever dream of a novel. I enjoyed the hell out of it. Tim Wagner, author of The Way of All Flesh and Eat the Night. Available from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and bookstores everywhere in both print and digital versions.
Life is an addiction.
Let go. Let it all burn.
A reading from Destroying the Tangible Illusion of Reality, or Searching for Andy Kaufman, by T. Fox Dunham, published by Perpetual Motion Machine Books. Death the Inevitable lived in a small stone hut on the side of the Irish Sea. Seals honked and howled the night through, and he sat on a boulder at the ocean's edge, careful not to touch the lichen or clams, lest he caused their death. And he contemplated changing his name, as it proved hard to shag someone if they knew you were Death the Inevitable. Always the inevitable was death. In his tiny kingdom by the Irish Sea, where he could not touch anything living, lest he'd kill them. This made it even harder to shag anyone living, since he had to wear full body protection, or they would not survive the encounter. One touch, direct flesh to flesh, would compel his one-time mates into such an orgasm that they'd scream and bite their tongues off. Then the inevitable effect would occur, killing them stone dead. Absolutely stone dead. Inevitably. Oh, hell! He swore into the sea, and the sea absorbed his curses, and did not speak back sans to sing him into a light repose. He watched the sun die and felt kinship, not to the sun, but to the last moment where the day's sun reached out to grip onto the earth before finally sinking into the dirt to suffocate. And the seals howled. I have been the subject of so many movies. All books are essentially about me, inevitably. All the songs that sing of love define me, and thus glorify me. Shite, I need something warm to love. The seals refused to answer back, not interested in his clumsy attempts to seduce them. In the pubs of the nearby villages standing for thousands of years, built by the ancient societies of blue people of Scotland death, the inevitable had seen rise and fall, yet always somehow the same. They drank whiskey by the cup and sang songs they knew of their youth. By and by, they'd come and see him by and by. He took some pot out of his top pocket of his leather jacket, cupped it into his palm, wrapped it in rolling paper, then lit a match. Instantly the flame doused, and he lit another and another. Still the flame died. Shite! Fire always died in his presence, yet he kept trying, hoping for a different result. For millions of years fire eluded him. Yet you give it to them! Death the Inevitable had no mother, so he had never learned to be polite or clean up his language. He dipped his bare knobby feet into the water and let his fat belly, swollen from all the souls that had passed through him on the way to the afterlife, and the lichen and the clams died. He picked up the dead carcasses of both and chewed them with broken teeth, smashed from eating the hard shells raw. He felt little pain, at least physically, however he did feel the agony. On the earth, the homeless waited for the pain to end. Junkies shoved needles into their arms, pressed the plungers, and waited for their consciousness to darken to oblivion. The old rotted early, the result of medical science perverting life, and they begged for release, not able to exact it themselves in a society that had advanced in science, but not in reason or kindness. Bad things happen for a reason. Bad things happen for a reason. Bad things happen for a reason. Oh, screw it! You lot can wait. And he heard a prayer. He always heard the prayers to hold back death, to keep them a bit longer. A young woman appeared on the coast. She looked pudgy in her summy dress, not the ideal model featured in magazines and shows on telly. On the mainland they're drinking whiskey. What are you drinking, love? Love, she said. Then you're a foolish young thing. What's your name? I be Death the Inevitable. Terrible I am I. I exist to release, to cure pain, to end the suffering of the world. I serve a necessary function. You want a screw? I'll pay anything to keep him here. Then let's deal. They waited until the next night, spending the day hanging around the hotel, watching movies, ordering room service, and drinking cider. Cynthia postponed until the evening to tell them about the nightmare. I dreamed of death. What did he look like? Anthony asked. I don't want to get conned by some flim-flam artist when it comes from me. Please don't talk like that, she said. Of course, why should I speak of it? The inevitable. That's what he called himself. Death the Inevitable. Catchy title. At midnight, they left their hotel room, sticking a Do Not Disturb sign on the door handle. Toya, Cynthia, and Anthony had stopped in a bar to have a stiff drink before heading off to the cemetery. They got into Mr. Snowball's, the ice cream truck, and Toya pulled out into the highway. The nondescript highway, he couldn't perceive the number, just another one of America's routes, built long and now decaying. Cynthia held the evidence, the letters and photos they had found that led them to their course. She couldn't read them again in the flashing highway lights and the sparse car headlights. They drove by diners, used car lots, closed shopping centers, and she caught words in illumination, saw the grainy color photos of Kaufman in his obnoxious outfit and splendor. Do you see that? Toya asked. What? That black sedan just pulled up behind us. It's going slow, but I swear it's tailing us. You're paranoid, Cynthia said. Just get us out of here. A reading from Destroying the Tangible Illusion of Reality or Searching for Andy Kaufman by T. Fox Dunham from Perpetual Motion Machine Publishing, now on sale at Amazon.com for Fox's birthday. The dead demand to be heard, and on What Are You Afraid of? Horror and Paranormal Show, Philadelphia's horror home, we listen.
New, true ghost stories every episode. Interviews with paranormal investigators. There is no supernatural.
The natural world is just far greater than we can perceive. More information and expanded content at www.whatareyoufraidofpodcast.com.
And follow us on Twitter at PFWhatAfraidOf. Find us on all major podcast services including iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify, iHeartRadio, or listen to us Fridays at 9 p.m. on the ParaX Radio Network.
I'm horror author T. Fox Dunham.
I'm horror author and filmmaker Phil Thomas.
So what are you afraid of?
If you like what you hear, leave us a review on your preferred podcast service.
What Are You Afraid of? Horror and Paranormal Shows.
Speak to the Dead.
Grey Matter Press presents a 21st Century Gothic from John C. Foster, the author of Mr. White. The Isle. There's a secret at the edge of the world. When a deadly menace threatens a remote island community, United States Marshal Virgil Bone digs into the island's macabre past. But some secrets should never be uncovered. Some curses should be believed. And some people will kill to keep it so. The Isle is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other fine retailers.
In the future, roving bands of comic book podcasts will savage the wasteland, once known as the Internet. One podcast, the Grolix Podcast, may not be the biggest, may not be the funniest, may not be the most well-spoken. Wait, what was my point again? Oh yes, the Grolix Podcast. Listen to it at grolixpodcast.com. That's GRAWLIX podcast.com.
Well, that was a little segment about death that I did. You can imagine it's an important topic to all of us, and we're speaking to Katrina Weidman, who investigates death on a weekly basis for Paranormal Lockdown. By the way, that book, Destroying the Tangible Illusion of Reality or Searching for Andy Kaufman, will be available on sale over at Amazon.com under T. Fox Dunham for my birthday. So I'm giving everybody a 10% off on my birthday. I wish they'd give me a 10% off. Anyway, we are back with Katrina Weidman. So, Kat, what was the most memorable thing that happened to you while ghost hunting in the last year?
There was a lot actually in the last year. So we did what the US is getting right now. We did 8 episodes in the US and then 10 episodes in the UK. So in the UK, they got split up into different seasons. In the US, everybody's getting them kind of like as one batch. So if like we're looking at the whole season, there was a lot of different things that happened. Something I found really interesting, we were at Higginsport School. It's like right on the border of Kentucky. And it's this old abandoned school. They don't use it anymore. But there's this ghost hunting team that has gone in there, and they've had a lot of experiences. And I had this like premonition dream about it before we went. And it's funny, sometimes before we go, I like to remain a little more blind about what's going on. sometimes I like to be fully versed in everything. Sometimes it's a for that one in particular, I knew the main stories going in and kind of what people had been experiencing. But this one story I didn't know about, and I had a dream about it. And I can't remember if it made it in the episode or not. But I had a dream about this little boy. And he was in an auditorium and he was just crying. And he was so upset. And it's something like he didn't want his mother to leave him. His mother had to go or something. And I remember what he was wearing. And as we get there, we're talking to, one of the ghost hunters that goes there frequently. And he described seeing this little boy wearing exactly what I saw in my dream of him wearing. And so like off the bat, like I kind of knew, I'm like, okay, this is going to be an interesting investigation, because if I have dreams like that, it usually tells me, I'm tapping into something. And so when we were there, we had a lot of different experiences happening to us. But when we were in the auditorium, we set up an experiment, and we have these light panels that go off if there's, motion of mass, and you have to be pretty close to them to get them to go off. And these dang light panels just kept going off when we would ask these questions. And so I set up an experiment with Nick where I was like, okay, let's, every time the answer is yes, make these light panels go off. And it's funny because after every question, we wouldn't get the light panels to go off. It was only after certain questions. And it lasted for, 15 to 20 minutes. And after that, Nick and I were standing on the stage together, and to his left and my left, he sees a shadow. And I didn't see it at first. I saw it the second time. And then we both saw it a third time together. And I've seen shadows, but never, like, it's always kind of like out of your side view. And that was the first time I ever seen a shadow like head on like that, where I was staring directly at it. And it just blew my mind. It was like this, it's almost like if somebody was popping out from the curtains, because we were standing on the stage. And that was pretty incredible. That investigation to me was pretty remarkable and interesting. The other one, it was so funny. We went to Shepton Mallet in England, which is like their oldest prison. Mm-hmm. And funny enough, the guy, Paul, who was giving us the tour, he's a historian there. He was asking me where I was from, and I was like, oh, the Philadelphia area. And he's like, oh, really? Like, whereabouts? I'm like, well, Bucks County. And he's like, oh my gosh. He's like, I go like vacation there every year. I'm like, you vacation in Bucks County every year? He's like, yeah. He's like, do you know Sesame Place?
Oh my.
He's like, yeah. He's like, do you know the Oxford Valley Mall? I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, I love it. And it's just a funny, who would have thought? I travel all the way to England to meet somebody who loves our area and travels here all the time. But we were in this prison, and there's a hanging room that they have, and they've had 3 different areas where they used to hang people. And this one is kind of the newest one. It was built during World War II for soldiers who had kind of gone AWOL, mm-hmm. And American soldiers were put to death there. And I believe altogether they executed 18 different soldiers. I think only 16 of them had died in the hanging room. The other 2 were shot. And excuse me. What was interesting about it was that Paul had a really significant experience there, and he didn't really believe in the paranormal before this. He was just into the history. Mm-hmm. And what had happened to him, he was talking about one of the soldiers, and his hand started to burn. And he was, with this group of people, so he didn't really acknowledge it. When he looked, I guess it was, if I'm remembering this story correctly, it was a few seconds later, a few minutes later, he had what looked like a cigarette burn on his hand. And what's really creepy is he still has it to this day. And this is like a year later, probably actually 2 years later, actually now. So when we went into the hanging room, that was obviously a place we wanted to focus on because of his experience. And we didn't have too much happen until one of us would stand in the drop where they, they would drop your body. There's a little room underneath the hanging room.
Yeah.
And when one of us would stand there, we would have things happen. And so we had things happen one night. We went back for the other night. And I stood in the middle this time. And when I was standing in the middle, we started getting these knocks in the room, like somebody knocking on a wall. And so we set up an experiment, like, okay, if, knock once for no, two for yes. And for over an hour, we had these responses every single time. And what's so odd about it is that, because I kept thinking, I know Nick was thinking this too, could it be something coming from outside? Could it be, does somebody sneak in? There's like a 20-foot wall surrounding this prison, 30-foot wall, whatever it is.
Well, it's a prison.
Yeah, and, so we're having these knockings happen, and the knockings are moving all throughout the room. So at one point, the knocking would be on the floor. The next point, it'd be on the ceiling. Next point, it'd be on the wall to our left. Next point, it'd be on the wall to our right. So it's consistently moving. And from what we compiled from that session it was a woman named Cassandra who was there in the 1600s who had stolen, I think it was medicine for her child. And they were going to kill her.
Well, very Les Mis.
And very much so. And it was also, if you think about it, the prison system back then was very much class warfare. So you had people in prison for just the silliest things. And they were obviously being kept in cells with murderers and rapists. And, children were kept with very dangerous men. Women were kept with dangerous men. It didn't matter. And so towards the end of our session, we're using George Brown, who's an engineer, and he's built this device called a geoport. And it's essentially an ITC device. And it kind of scans through different radio frequencies, but George has modified his, so it also works off of electromagnetic waves and EMF fluctuations, and and you can run different programs through it too. So we were using that device, and really nothing was coming through that was audible, at least. And towards the end of over an hour of this knocking happening all throughout the room, we couldn't find a natural cause for it. It's so clear. This woman's voice comes through, and she has an accent, and she says, "I don't want to die." And then that was it. I
don't want to die.
It was so clear. That's the thing that blew my mind, because I'm pretty skeptical about a lot of the devices we use, because it's all fringe science, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's very fringe. Nothing's proven in the paranormal. Obviously, that's why it's called the paranormal. So I always kind of keep that skeptical lens on. I'll tell you, that was the clearest thing I've ever heard come through that, and it came at the same time we're having these knockings that we can't find an explanation for. So that was pretty memorable to me.
That is rather creepy on so many levels. The prison, the haunting, and the terrible drama and emotion that happened there, that of course is common to creating and motivating hauntings. Yeah. So, can you give us some hints on what our audience can expect on the season finale of Paranormal Lockdown?
Ooh, I can. So, the last episode it was probably one of my favorite places we ever went. It was an old abbey that obviously, King Henry, he was like, screw all you in an abbey. We're done with that. And so when that happened, private buyers came in and they made it into a home. Eventually, it got turned into a school. And I think it was, I can't remember the exact date off the top of my head. I think it was the mid to late 1800s.
Okay.
They found skeletons under the floorboards. And these skeletons were in these hand-carved stone coffins, indicating that they were somebody of great importance. They have no idea who they are. So it's funny that, people have been having these experiences. People had these experiences since I think it was the late 1600s, early 1700s of the paranormal, not knowing that there's these bodies buried underneath these floorboards. So they had them carbon dated, and they date back over 1,000 years.
Wow. Wow, that's... Wow, so it could have been going back to the early Anglo-Saxon days.
And it's funny. I mean, they're still there. You can go and see. They kept them there. So they actually have them enclosed in the floor. They didn't move them. And there's like this glass kind of panel over it, and you can actually go there and see it. But it's just kind of funny that, you know, all these kids are going to school there, and they might be going to school on top of a burial ground. You know. So
the church chooses location of an ancient burial ground going back to pre-Christian England because the area has some significance, which was very common what they did by assimilating pagan culture into modern Christianity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it was definitely, we had a lot of interesting things happen there. So I think the last two investigations that are coming up are actually pretty spectacular.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing that. We have a question from the friend of our show, and he's a true Katrina Weidman fan. This is from Paul Dixon. He's lead investigator of a group called Strange and Mysterious here in Pennsylvania. They like to focus on unnoticed, strange locations that a lot of other paranormal investigators have ignored. And he said he wants to know more about your personal, in quotation mark, abilities, and asks why they're not more utilized on the show.
When I first started Paranormal State, you know, I was pretty vocal that I've had these things happen to me. And originally, you know, if you go back and you watch Paranormal State, we all have our own individual roles as far as what we do in the team. And I was the case manager. And so, you know, I mainly interviewed people. And originally, though, the show opening labeled me as the psychic. Yeah. And I was like, I was like, oh, no, you can't label me as that. And they're like, well, why? I'm like, because I don't consider myself that. Like, I've had these things happen, you know, but I can't control them. They come and they go, you know. And it's funny because Michelle Belanger, who's a very good friend of mine, and actually Chip Coffey too, when I've been able to like really focus and like either through like card reading or holding objects as somebody, you know, that somebody owns, I've been able to have like abilities come through stronger. But to answer his question, I think a little better, I think the reason they don't really highlight it on any of the shows I've been on is because that's not what I'm really brought in to do. You know, I'm not brought in as the Chip Coffey or the Michelle Belanger. And at this point in my life, where I'm at with, you know, using those abilities, I don't think I'm at that level yet where I would feel coming in to give somebody that information, because I don't fully trust the information I would get at this point. So, you know, I'm brought in as an objective researcher, investigator, to try to get answers and document these types of phenomena that people have been experiencing. So I think that's really why you don't get that highlighted more on the shows. So one example I can think of off the top of my head, with Lockdown at least, was when we were at Trans-Allegheny, and this episode was in season 1. And we were up on the 4th floor, and I will never forget this night because it was, I mean, we were up there for hours. I think the show makes it look like we were there for 10 minutes, you know, but it was hours. And we all had these crazy experiences happening to us. Rob's camera kept dying. His batteries kept dying. He would hear footsteps rush up on him. I would see shadows out of the corner of my eye. Nick was having insane anxiety where he like could not relax or catch his breath. And again, you know, as being objective, you would look at that and be like, it's probably all in your head. It's a scary building. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Right.
However, you know, we paid attention to it and we're like, let's just see what happens if we stay up here. Can we capture something objectively? Because we're having these things happen to us. They feel real to us. You know, is there something actually with us? And we stayed up there. And on Rob's camera, he has a specialized camera. He captured what we call the creeper. And it starts off, and now I can never see it on my TV. I've had to watch it on my computer to see this. Mm-hmm. I saw it in the moment. When we captured it, we played it back right away on Rob's monitor, but I didn't see the whole figure until I saw it at home. And it starts off as this ball, and it like elongates into what looks like a person, and then it like kind of turns into this long form and it slithers away.
Oh my, the creeper.
The creeper. And it was about, 15, 20 feet behind me and Nick. We didn't see it with our own eyes, but we felt it. And, even before that, just on a very, and I would call this your sensitivity. I think everybody has it, just that instinct. We very much felt like we had to be in that area and we didn't know why. Like even before, even like the day before this happened, we were feeling very drawn to that area. So, I definitely utilize any kind of sensitivities that come to me for an investigation. But again, you have to be really careful about that because you want to remain objective as possible. So I don't ever really highlight those skills because, again, I don't want to kind of spoil any of the work that I've been doing as far as, I am not the psychic on the team. You know what I mean? That's not what
Right.
I'm brought in to do.
Right, you have a position on the team. You're a professional, you're a researcher, you're an investigator. You have psychics that come on, but you have your job and you do it. And that's great. We love watching it on Paranormal Lockdown, which the season finale will be on this Tuesday coming up, February 5th. And of course, for our fans in the future, this is 2019 on Destination America. And it's been great speaking to Katrina Weidman. Now, something for our noir fans. I know we have a lot of readers who listen to the show. A Time for Violence. It's an anthology that I'm in. Is coming out from Close to the Bone. We have the pre-order. You can get the digital copy pre-order now at Amazon.com, and we'll have a link for that up at the website at www.whatareyoufraidofpodcast.com. It's an incredible anthology of some horror, some dark stories, and a lot of criminal noir, which is one of my specialties, of course. I have a story in it about the Philadelphia, New Jersey mob, which I quite enjoyed writing, and we have some wonderful authors in this. Richard Keismar has a story in it called Blood Brothers. Of course, he does a lot of work with Stephen King. Richard Goodwin is in it, good friend Mark Slade. Joe R. Lansdale's in it, Andy Roosh, Paul D. Brazil, T. Fox Dunham, naturally, Isabel Blackthorne, Billy Kismar, Tony Knighton, who's going to be on the show next week, along with Don Allison, our wonderful Civil War historian and ghost hunter, and John A. Russo, one of the original producers of A Night of the Living Dead, has a story in it. So we'll be speaking to authors in this anthology in the next couple of episodes. And again, it is out on Amazon. Well, the UK Amazon, but still Amazon. But it's an incredible book, and our noir fans definitely have to check out this premier noir crime anthology. So we're talking to Katrina Weidman, and another book that's on sale is my book, Destroying the Tangible Illusion of Reality, or Searching for Andy Kaufman, by T. Fox Dunham, that would be me, out from Perpetual Motion Machine Publishing, is going on sale. The e-copy weekend for my birthday will be on sale for a couple of weeks, and you can find links up for it at www.whatareyoufraidofpodcast.com. Now, speaking of exciting new projects, I checked out your Haunted Kitchens blog, and you know I love to cook. And this is an incredible blog that you're doing up at your website at www.katrinaweidman.com, and you're visiting kitchens that are not only haunted, but have wonderful cooks and new recipes that you're putting up on the site. And it's incredible. Now, your first one up, and now how do I pronounce this? You went to Bube's Brewery?
It's Buba is how he would actually name. He was a German immigrant. But everyone says Booby. But it's actually like Booba. So it's Booby's Brewery in Mount Joy, PA. And Haunted Kitchens is a project I've had on my back burner for years at this point, and I'm so happy that it's finally, getting moving forward. And it's really coming from, I grew up with a bunch of different cooks and pastry chefs in my family. And so we knew how to cook from a very, very early age. I was baking, at the time I was like 5, because my mom was a baker. So, we were always doing things like that. And I noticed that I was always going to, like, whenever I went out to eat, I really wanted to go to haunted places. So I'm like, oh, it'd be really cool to kind of highlight these places that are haunted, because I know I enjoy that stuff, and I know there's other people that do too. So Haunted Kitchens is, we go to these allegedly haunted places. We talk about the history, we talk about the paranormal experiences, and then of course we talk about the food. And what's really cool is if you're a home chef or baker like me or you, I also share recipes from the establishment, so you can actually make them at home and have a little piece of it yourself.
Well, I'm a huge duck fan.
You are? Interesting. Well, you will like this, because I was not a duck fan until I had it at Boobies.
And I only get duck like twice a year. It's kind of expensive. And for my birthday, I always go and get it, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Oh, you totally should. It's really good. The atmosphere is amazing. Everybody's so kind there. That's kind of, if you check out the blog, that's kind of my biggest takeaway from my visit there, is the amount of positive energy that Sam Allen and his staff put into that place. They really, really love that place. And you can absolutely feel it. And not only just in the atmosphere, but you can taste it in the drinks, you can taste it in the food. It's definitely all made with love.
Oh, I love that. It's a wonderful blog, and I look forward to reading it. You can find it over at www.katrinaweidman.com, and I imagine you'll be making a lot of entries coming up combining food and ghosts, your two specialties. And you actually got me to say boobies on this show. It's the first time anyone's ever done that. Thank you so much. Anyway, speaking of haunted locations, we have New Hope up here. Of course, you know New Hope, and it's wonderful. And they have the Logan Inn, and I know they have some ghost stories up there, and they also have some fine dishes. You should check them out.
Oh, yes, of course, the Logan Inn. I've actually contacted them for Haunted Kitchens, so we'll see. But so Haunted Kitchens, it's a monthly blog. So the last Wednesday of every month, a new blog will be up. And of course, it's expanding already, so you can sign up to subscribe. That way you're the first to get it, and it's free.
I've already subscribed.
Oh, perfect. Wonderful. And also on Instagram and Facebook, and I encourage people, if you make the recipes, definitely tag the Instagram and Facebook in it and tell us how it went.
Thank you so much for talking to us. It's such a pleasure to have you on the show. And to remind our audience, the season finale of Paranormal Lockdown will be on Tuesday, February 5th at Destination America, and it's going to be incredible. So one final question before you take your leave. What are some cool projects that are upcoming for you in the future?
Ooh, there's a lot. There is one that will be announced in the next couple weeks, and I'm very excited about it. It's actually a pretty big project that I've been working on, and I think if you're into the paranormal, you're going to be really into it. So just keep an eye on, I will announce on my website first and then go to social media. But if you guys, if you sign up for just a subscription, I put out a newsletter, and you'll get it there first. But I'm very, very excited about it. It should be announced, I think, in like 3 to 4 weeks. And then I just have, for those that don't know, I'm a musician too and a singer.
Yes.
So I'll definitely have some more music stuff coming up this year. So hang tight on that. And nothing to, like, as far as like hard dates, I don't have anything for that yet, but it's moving forward at least,
We're hanging tight. We are. Yeah. We're excited.
Yeah. So, and then also events. I do a lot of events and lectures throughout the year on the paranormal. So actually, if you go to my website in the upcoming events and appearances, and also I have a story on my Instagram at Katrina Weidman. There's 2 events listed right now. Both are in May. One is in the Midwest. The other one is in New Jersey, which is nice and close to us. And what's cool about that one, actually, it's only $20 for admission, which is really nice. Because a lot of times these events are a little more expensive. So I do have more events though coming up that are currently being booked. They're just not, we're just waiting on official word to be able to put it out.
And you can find more information about Katrina and her projects and links to everything she's talking about at our website at www.whatareyoufraidofpodcast.com. You can find out links to her haunted blog. You can check out information about her future stuff that she's doing, and also links to Haunted Kitchen, which is just incredible. thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me back.
And we look forward to talking to you again next year after season 4.
Yes, of course. Well, I'm sure we'll be in touch and we'll figure something out.
Well, this is T. Fox Dunham at What Are You Afraid of? Horror and Paranormal Show on Parax Radio at 9 o'clock on Friday nights Eastern Standard Time. We're out here in Philly, and this has been episode 109, Katrina Weidman. Make sure to check out the website at www.whatayouafraidofpodcast.com for all of our previous episodes, a bunch of ghost stories in our archive, articles, reviews, and interviews with authors like From a Time for Violence coming out from Close to the Bone, which you can pre-order at Amazon.com. You'll find links for that at www.whatayouafraidofpodcast.com. This has been T. Fox Dunham.
It's like, do you know Sesame Place?
Oh my.
He's like, yeah. He's like...
T. Fox Dunham lives in Philadelphia with his wife Allison. He's a lymphoma survivor, cancer patient, modern bard, and historian. His first book, The Street Martyr, was published by Gutter Books. A major motion picture based on the book is being produced by Throughline Films. Destroying the Tangible Illusion of Reality or Searching for Andy Kaufman, a book about what it's like to be dying of cancer, was recently released from Perpetual Motion Machine Publishing, and Fox has a story in the next Stargate anthology from MGM and Fandemonium Books, Points of Origin. Fox is an active member of the Horror Writers Association, and he's had published hundreds of short stories and articles. His motto is Wrecking Civilization, one story at a time.
Phil Thomas is an author and screenwriter from the suburbs of Philadelphia. His screenplays have been produced into feature films False Face and Always from Darkness, and are available in major retailers such as Best Buy and Target, as well as availability on Netflix and Amazon On Demand. His short films can be viewed on his YouTube channel, Film Zero Presents. He is a member of the International Association of Professional Writers and Editors, and he currently writes for Cultured Vultures, Game Skinny, and BloodyDisgusting.com. His first novel, The Poe Predicament, is being published in 2018 by Caliburn Press.
The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.